So let's talk about PlayStation. This showcase is yet to be officially announced. However, apparently it's coming as soon as possible by the end of May. 10 times out of 10, when we record a video, something gets announced as we're talking about it. So chances are it's probably already out there. But still, at least then we'll know the specific date. We're still going to get into rumors, leaks, predictions, etc. The first one for PlayStation is the surprise announcement of the Venom game to be arriving early 2025. Josh, this is one of yours.
This is one of mine. The more I was weighing up what the hell Insomniac was going to do at this showcase, because Insomniac is like the studio that PlayStation always leans on for these kinds of presentations, because they always have so many games in production, so many projects that they're working on. So I didn't know whether we were going to get Venom as a standalone game, whether or not we were going to get more information about Wolverine, because, you know, they did have all the leaks earlier this year. So I was wondering whether they would want to get out with something official to kind of give fans and PlayStation fans something to chew on. But I think Venom is the safer bet, because with Spider-Man 2 releasing last year, everyone was sort of clamoring for either DLC or a standalone Venom game. And we, again, from those leaks, we do know that something Venom related is coming. And I think we'll get an announcement for that to arrive early 2025 before Wolverine presumably drops at the end of the year. And I think we might get that in lieu of any DLC for Spider-Man 2 as well.
It's interesting. The DLC situation is so confusing, because I think we all assumed it was going to get another City That Never Sleeps kind of add-on thing. You had the different teasers. The people discovered the room that was devoted to the hand that was in there, which seemed to be setting up some kind of Wolverine thing. People thought it was like Daredevil related to begin with. I think it would be nice to get something official from Insomniac, because I feel really sorry for everything that has happened to them over the past 6 months. Just a really rotten state of affairs after releasing such a kick-ass game.
That's probably why we haven't heard more, because they're still struggling to put things together. But yeah, like Josh says, because of the amount of leaks that came out, there are things that point towards the idea of a Venom game or a Venom spin-off. I like the idea of them hitting that sort of 2-year cadence thing, or 2 to 3 years, doing a main game, doing a spin-off. I love the Miles Morales game. I liked how tight and focused that thing was. So I like the idea of a super focused Venom game. And you barely play as Venom in the game itself, so it always kind of felt like they developed all that stuff, all those animations, for something else.
It needs to do one thing, though.
Go on.
I need to be able to eat all the balloon children.
Yes. Oh, yes. You would now want to be absorbing those kids.
My balloon! We will, because I was going to say, we'll come back around on that, because there's a potential that something like Ultimate Spider-Man makes its way to PS5, but I'll get back to that in a bit.
What?
Yeah, throw something else in there.
Going off what you said there about, that they've already got the Venom moveset in the game, which for my money felt amazing. I loved those animations. I loved the brutality of it. We're just getting into full spoilers now, but like that fight with Kraven, highlight of the experience for me. So I'd love to see them take that framework, put it in the open world that we already have, and tell a more focused story with Carnage, perhaps, because that thread is left open in the sequel as well. And to me, honestly, as much as I was looking forward to DLC, I did prefer Miles Morales over the City.
Totally. Yeah, I thought the DLC for the Spider-Man game, apart from the heist, it really underwhelmed me.
I agree. So when they did leave that Carnage tease in the game, my first thought was, we'll explore this in DLC. But then my second thought was, I don't know if I want a 7 out of 10 Carnage DLC. So if they save that for a standalone 10 to 12 hour release, I think that will be a cool way to continue that symbiote story and continue that thread while giving you a brand new playable character.
Yeah, man, just give me an excuse to go swing around that city more. Like, as much as we all kind of burned through Spider-Man 2, got the platinum, it was super easy to get. I wanted more excuses to do like combat encounters, dropping it. Like, I don't want it to be Ubisofted to hell, but at the same time, just give me a bit more. Like, Spidey 1 had way more to it.
I'm really curious how this franchise moves forward, because obviously they had the big expanded New York and stuff. And the way that I'm looking at this right now is that the Venom game probably isn't going to expand that world. At what point are we going to try and plug more stuff into the open worlds that we already have? Because the one thing that I think was the biggest criticism of Marvel Spider-Man 2 is that it did not make enough use out of the gorgeous open world that was created. The side missions were really disappointing. They're kind of like, they didn't really address the criticisms that were there in the first Marvel Spider-Man. If anything, they kind of made things a little bit worse, the lack of side missions that were going on. So I hope that if we're getting a new standalone Venom game, that we're actually going to have some iteration on the open world. That'll be the main thing that I really want to see here. Obviously, Venom's going to interact with the open world a different way, but also let's try and address those areas as well.
I agree, especially with the introduction of the other islands in the game, like the introduction of Queens, making that play space bigger. I really enjoyed those sections in Spider-Man 2, but it did feel like just a sort of bigger version of what we've already got. You're swinging through, or you're using your web wings and flying through those areas at such a rapid pace. I always think it's cool when you go down to ground level, and someone like Venom, if you keep the moveset, tied to just big jumps and clawing your way up walls.
Hulk ultimate destruction, baby.
Yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man did. I think you can get that sort of focused NYC game that we've kind of been clamoring for since the first Spider-Man release, when we all wanted that Daredevil Hell's Kitchen sort of superhero on the ground spin-off.
I'll tell you one thing I'll call though as well, since we're talking about Spider-Man 2 spoilers, near the very end of that game, Venom sprouts some wings, and on the coding level they have proven they can stream that city in well enough to fly around. So, maybe you can fly around as Venom.
Do we think that's gonna, because Harry's kind of in commission at the minute, so
yes.
do we think this is gonna be, are they gonna drop Eddie on us out of nowhere?
I think they might, I think they need a new character like that, and I wonder whether a new character will give us
Daily Bugle opportunities, maybe. Hanging out with Jay Jonah. Jay Jonah's like, you're such a failure, Eddie, and I'm like, no, I'm Venom, please.
I think it would.
That's exactly what he sounds like.
Yeah, opportunity to introduce Eddie, maybe do like Agent Venom, like you kind of you got a bit of that with Harry in the game, but as proper Venom, it could be cool. I don't know. I think there's a lot of potential there.
There's next thing down is just a general thing that you wrote down, Josh, about the exclusive holiday releases being confirmed, Silent Hill 2, Until Dawn's remake, and maybe getting eyes on Concord as well.
Yeah, this for me I just threw in because we do know that there aren't going to be any major first-party franchise releases until I think it's after April next year,
financial
April 2025. So I can imagine them leaning like they have all year, to great success, might I add, on those second-party relationships where they're exclusive to PlayStation 5 and might also come to PC, but we're not going to see a new Naughty Dog game surprise release at the end of the year. It's why I put Venom's release date as early 2025, because a part of me thought they might Miles Morales announce Venom now and have it released this holiday season, but I think just based on the comments from the CEO, that probably isn't going to happen. So I do think after we've had stuff like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, a bunch of great second party drops in the first half of the year, I think we finally will get Silent Hill 2 dated, and I think the Until Dawn remake will probably drop as well, and maybe a couple of other games like that are exclusive and tide us over and we look forward to. Phantom Blade Zero I think I had down as well, but no first party releases for this holiday season, and honestly I'm kind of fine with that. I think they have a lot of first party stuff that will be ready to go starting next year. And I've really enjoyed digging into stuff like Rise of the Ronin this year and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's given me a reason to constantly go on my PlayStation. Honestly, I don't know about you two, but I've played more on my PlayStation 5 this year than maybe any year since it released. Like, I used to alternate between that and the Xbox to see what was on Game Pass, but with these second-party drops, I've been like, well, that's exclusive to PlayStation. I'm going to play that for 40 hours. Then Stellar Blade's out. I'll play that for 40 hours. Oh my God, I missed Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There's another 60 hours.
I have like 200 hours in Helldivers.
Helldivers.
Josh, everyone bully Josh to go play Helldivers.
We need to start a campaign. Get Josh Brown on Helldivers. The specific wording from the CEO is no new major existing franchise titles. So I guess you're right about something like Venom could be next year or whatever. Excuse me. But yeah, in regards to something like the Until Dawn remake, maybe they also tie that in with the movie teaser. Like there's the whole cross-promotional stuff that they've got going on where there's a movie tie-in, TV tie-ins to various games, which brings me on to the next thing. The idea that they would have a specific section on all the crossover PlayStation media properties that are in production right now. Maybe an update on The Last of Us Season 2. Confirm the Bloodborne movie. This is something that's been mentioned for a good few months. Daniel RPK, who's a well-known movie leaker, said there's a Bloodborne movie in the works. Apparently written by Daniel Lemke, who's the Kung Fu Panda writer, which is a hilarious pivot for that dude. But maybe. There's also the Until Dawn movie, like I said. There's the God of War TV show. I think it's over on Amazon. And alongside all that stuff, to bring it back to Bloodborne, is an updated PS5 version of the game, which is something people have been asking for 9 years now. It's been 9 years since Bloodborne, and we never got a 60 FPS patch, etc. The assumption being that they were waiting alongside whatever the tie-in was going to be, so they can boost the sales that way. But the amount of PlayStation Studios stuff that has come along in the last few years, Uncharted, Gran Turismo, There's something else I think I'm forgetting. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about there, as well as the Horizon TV show.
Yeah.
There's a lot in there.
Why I think this is going to happen at the showcase rather than its own standalone thing is that recently when Sony confirmed its 2 new PlayStation CEOs, I think it was Herman Hulst, who is associated with Guerrilla Games. He's now not only overseeing Sony Interactive Entertainment's... Sony Entertainment Interactive? The first one.
Sony content.
Yeah, Sony content guy. Not only is he overseeing their internal studios, but he's also in charge of getting these kinds of deals done. He's focused on the adaptations that are coming out. So I think because that's been crystallized and formalized in his job title, I think we'll start to see the merger of those different media outputs more and more at showcases like this. And like you said, they've got such a lineup of stuff that's already confirmed, but we don't know much about. I think we will see a little bit of it here, kind of like how when Neil Druckmann talked about the Last of Us TV show at Summer Games Fest a few years ago. And honestly, I think after Fallout was such a huge success for both Amazon and Xbox, if they have a God of War TV show in development with Amazon
they
as
will
well,
now. Like a teaser now. Anyway.
Like that's what I mean. I feel like they will want to fast track even just talking about that. They might not be able to get casting announcements or whatever, but I think they'll be like, right, everyone loved Fallout on Amazon. Hey, we've got one coming to Amazon as well, and it's God of War.
It's so delightfully devilish, this strategy, because you think about it, like, obviously one of the big things, if I'm going to use the comparison here of, like, comic book movies don't necessarily lead to comic book readers, I think if you associate the video game adaptations in the video game space, people have to tune into those video game reveals to then actually see that thing, and it builds a community, it, like, gets people interested in the games. Obviously, we had the evidence of, like, the Fallout sales spiking.
Oh, yeah.
People, like, re-downloading Fallout 4 and, you know, New Vegas and Fallout 3 or whatever. So this is clever. It's deviously content-ish, but it is also very clever.
They Sony love looking at a previously successful plan and then just doing their own version of it, or responding directly to it. That was the whole thing that won them the generation 10 years ago with the whole you can trade in games on PlayStation. Like, one of their favorite things to do.
The Yu-Gi-Oh! In defense card trick.
One of their favorite things to do is dive in. And because that whole thing about when the Fallout TV show blew up last month or whatever, and Bethesda/Xbox's response was to put a few patches out, which according to a lot of the community broke the vast majority of the mods that were installed and things like that. They can do a better job of that in regards to just saying, like, look at all the amount of projects we have in the works, and then maybe put some games on discounts or whatever it is. Do a bit more than just missing the window.
You know what, man? I agree with you that Sony definitely historically has checked out what's happening and the current zeitgeist and the current culture, and then kind of followed suit. But I actually think they were at the tip of the spear for at least the television stuff. I think The Last of Us is going to be, whether you like that show or not, like instrumental in changing the general public's perception of video game adaptations, especially in the TV space. And Fallout has only bolstered that. By signifying that, we will get video game movies like Uncharted or Gran Turismo, but it seems like television is the place for really good adaptations, and if they can keep that momentum going, like Ewan said, that actually does directly translate to sales. Fallout sales got a big boost. The Last of Us sales got a big boost when that show came out. Like, I don't think, like you said, we've really seen that translation and that attach rate, to use a horrible, cold corporate term, in other media crossovers.
Now, well, there's a couple of things for that. Like, one, the Jim Ryan era, which is obviously ended now, but like his whole thing seemed to be, let's get some sort of TV show, some sort of cross-media thing on the go for each major franchise, and then put all those things in the works, whether it be God of War or the Horizon show. And you can feel that, like the overall PlayStation Studios push is like, let's just remind you that this brand exists over and over and over again. One of the specific IP that's getting a ton of stuff attached to it is Horizon. There's a Lego Horizon game, there's a Horizon MMO, there's the next Horizon main game, there's the remake of Horizon Zero Dawn that came out in 2017. So they are doubling the hell down on that and reminding you that thing exists in every possible way.
It's really funny. Sorry, Ewan, to jump in. I find it fascinating just off what you said there, Scott, because back in the day, right, video games, licensed video games for movies were viewed as just part of the marketing wing for that movie. No one cared about them.
I still think they are,
just
but
like,
yes.
Well, yeah, in the art to an extent. It's just like, get them out though. Like, get them out in a year, get them out with the film, and that can just be used to market the the movie itself. Now I think we've seen, as gaming has gotten bigger in terms of the money that it brings in and its cultural impact, we're now sort of seeing the inverse of that, where the games come first and they're huge successes, and now people are like, right, get us a TV show, get us a movie spin-off.
Remind people this thing exists.
Remind people this thing exists and get people into the game.
That's what I meant, sorry, when I was saying
that.
It's the same way.
Oh, no, that's what I mean. That's why I'm jumping off what you said, because I think that's absolutely spot on. And it's only light bulbed moment for me there about how that dichotomy shifted a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like that. Yeah, the fact that the industry's gotten so much bigger. The thing is, the movies that have come out so far, like I liked Uncharted a lot. I get all the product placement stuff.
Come in with
that movie's final set piece is awesome. That feels like it could be something from like Uncharted 4 or whatever. But I was going to say, none of those movies have been like 10 out of 10s or even more than like a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
The thing that I want them to take the lessons from Fallout the Fallout TV show is that like you can be authentic in different ways. I feel like the issue with like stuff like Uncharted is like, and this is the one thing that I really, really hope about this video game adaptation boom that we're going to, because it's going to happen. It is exploding before our very eyes.
I was going to quickly throw that in. It was either Daniel RPK or it might have just been the Hollywood Reporter saying that internally video games are the new comic books.
Yeah.
That's the new well of stuff to take and adapt.
Really hope that it's a case of we're looking at these things in a considered way, like the Fallout TV show, like the Last of Us TV show, and going, okay, how do we stay true to how this is good? And obviously, you know, there's going to be questions about the point of doing stuff like this. If you've already got a cinematic video game, what's the point in translating it? And the answer is just do it authentically. Don't just make it like, hey, it's the next big thing, because that's the big issue that I had with Uncharted. It's like, we're going to get a name actor in Tom Holland, going to get a name actor in Mark Wahlberg. We're going to get the guy who directed, it was the Venom director who did it, wasn't it? Or I completely made that up.
No, I think it was the Zombieland director, who I guess was also the Venom director.
Yeah, okay, that just goes with my priorities.
I was just trying to connect the dots to make sure I was right.
There was a way that you could have done a good Uncharted movie, and that was not how you did it. And I just hope that they look at the lessons of that and go, okay, how do we serve the brand better, you know?
Yeah. I think that's, sorry, Scott. I think that's important to note, because Sony, not just PlayStation, Sony is a chaotic company, like just through and through.
Oh, yeah.
On the one hand, you have Sony Pictures, which sucks ass, in my opinion.
I saw the ADR on Madam Web the other day, by the way. What the hell, brother?
As someone who paid good money to
tried to stop him, but he wouldn't do it.
Everyone tried to stop me. I had to know. Like, the movie output and their movie plans have been just absolutely criminal. It lost them so much money. But on the inverse, Sony Television kicks ass. Like, that is the production company that gave us The Last of Us, that, if you did not know, actually gave us Breaking Bad. That was for AMC, but it's not an AMC in-house
Community.
show. And Community. It was a Sony thing that was then licensed to AMC, which is like why it's on Netflix and stuff, which I think is really cool. So they've got a track record that is really strong. Kind of like how Warner Brothers is chaotic in the movie verse, but has like HBO, right, propping them up with like that tenure. And I just hope that, you know, with the successes of The Last of Us, Fallout, or whatever, I mean, I like Uncharted enough, but it's very clear to me that the money and the prestige is in television right now.
I think it is to a degree. I think it's interesting. Like, it is, to me, like, it is exactly what you said about like the TV show, the movie is the reminder that the game exists, because that's still the core thing. I feel like the rumors about the Horizon TV show are that it's all set in the, like, way before the machines arrive. It's all set following Elizabeth Sobeck, and everything that happens with her just like way before Aloy is on the scene. Maybe they jump back and forward. But that made me think that it's going to be more like a CW show, and they'll just save the money, you know, even doing the machines, just do a really simple, low-budget show, remind people that the game exists.
That's frustrating for me, because on one hand, I'm like, I really want video, like the Fallout TV show does the right thing by, we're not going to adapt any story from the game, right? But the thing with Horizon is like, Aloy is like intrinsic to that story, and I feel like if you're going to adapt a video game as a thing, it makes sense to make it a movie and make it about Aloy's story, because that's the reason why that series has resonated with people. I think the world building is probably compelling to a lot of folks, as is the aesthetic, but it's still Aloy's journey, and obviously, like, you get into the whole murky waters there of like, well, it's already a cinematic video game, what purpose do you get in adapting it for that reason? But it's like, it would be like an Uncharted movie without Nathan Drake to me, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like a Horizon TV show, that screams content more to me than we're going to make a considered adaptation of Aloy's adventures for the big screen, if that makes sense.
I think all of this is testing the waters, although something like The Last of Us proved it, and then obviously Fallout even more so, but a lot of these projects are already in the works anyway, in terms of how much money you can throw at a TV show for the, like I said, for the main reason to be an advert for the game. But the Fallout show is that's the new bar. Like, I think Last of Us did really, really well, like you said, in terms of reminding people that video games stories can be brilliant and character writing and everything, but the Fallout show is so visually memorable, and like that show is awesome. Like,
Walton Goggins, baby.
Yes, the Goggins effect. Next thing down is the potential for a PlayStation 2 emulation showcase. This is why I mentioned Ultimate Spider-Man before. People realized that there's a new listing. Gamatsu actually reported it. This broke a couple of days ago that 2002 Star Wars The Clone Wars was shown available on PlayStation 5. However, in the description, it lists various features that aren't on current PS2 games that you can play on PS5. The description reads, experience Star Wars The Clone Wars, originally released on the PlayStation 2 console, enhanced with up-rendering, rewind, quick save, and custom video filters. That's how PS1 emulation works on the PS5. So Sony hasn't put this much time into PS2 emulation. The PlayStation 2 games that play on PS5 are terrible. Ape Escape 2, The Warriors, whatever, they're just glitchy as hell. The games are awesome. They're just glitchy as hell. Like, the levels don't load. It's bad emulation. If you play on a PC and Mac, you've used emulation, and it's not reading the files right, it just doesn't load properly. That whole thing was just a failed experiment. It feels like by listing this stuff, they at least want to do right by the people who, or the console itself, and maybe that leads to greater investment in PlayStation 2 on PS5 overall. Couple of things. One being the way that Nintendo approach this stuff. Like, they have N64 games on the Switch, they run beautifully, they're upscaled, you can rewind, you can have save states. Again, Sony like responding to something that works. Just do that with a PlayStation 2 library. Also, Jim Ryan has finally left. He's the dude that never cared about the past. He was always like, why would anyone want to play these games? If you have new people in leadership positions like Herman Holst and Hideaki Nishino, then why not double down on, hey, by the way, the PS2 was awesome, and here's a selection of games every month that run better than
this
ever.
Isn't the same thing as like a normal Aspire Star Wars re-release.
No, this would just be literal ports that run better than ever.
Right, okay, that's interesting.
Assumedly not that much dev time needs to be put into them. It's literally like emulation on a PC.
Because my first thought when I saw that was that it was going to be another Aspire re-release, because they've literally re-released every single Star Wars game ever now. And like, we got to the point where Disney just thought, he want Buzz Lightyear as Star Command for the PlayStation 1 on here.
Yes. I guess it depends. Yeah, it depends how much they're putting into it. So far, the games have been a really weird pick. Like, they had the Phantom Menace game on there, and now they've got Clone Wars, and it's like random little sort of movie tie-ins or things like that. Not really an all hits, old school PS1 or PlayStation 2 library. It's not like you've got the Metal Gear Solid collection or GTAs or anything like that. I know that requires bigger conversations with publishers, and they would rather sell you something like the GTA Definitive Edition. But I feel like this is a rising tide raises all ships thing, where once they get the emulation working, then it should be a lot easier for publishers to say, just throw that old version on there. If anything, it reminds them of the upscaled version.
If they can sort out the licensing for those Activision Marvel games, then that would be a dream.
Ultimate Alliance.
Well, they had that on PlayStation. They had a remaster. I managed to download that in time before it got taken off, but I know some people weren't so fortunate. So yeah.
Well, that's the thing, and it's like, if the Clone Wars game, whatever. Like, I don't really remember that being
bad.
Yeah,
it was the precursor to Battlefront, so it was like a vehicle game. It
like nothing that was massively special, but it has a little bit of that nostalgic like head turn pull. It's like, oh, that thing's available, cool. Like, I'll go and see what that's like. I just hope this opens the gate to having a more dedicated library of PS2 games on PS5. Because I love emulation done right, save states, rewinds,
preservation as well.
Just preservation in general, and the PS2 library has so many awesome games, like PsyOps: The Mindgate Conspiracy, which I will mention every podcast until it appears again. Thoughts on the PS2 stuff?
Yeah, I agree with you both, man. Like, I feel like they promised a lot when they announced that they were bringing those PlayStation 1 games to the PlayStation Classics collection for PlayStation Plus Premium. That's a lot of PlayStation branding mouthful there.
Peter Piper picked a PlayStation.
And I've loved a bunch of those games, played a bunch of those games, like went back to Buzz Lightyear Star Command, did Toy Story 2, played Star Wars Demolition, Star Wars The Phantom Menace. I've jumped into those titles and enjoyed them, but like you said, they could have done so much more with them. And with the with the rumor and leak that PS2 stuff is going to come to that as well. I hope they don't just abandon the PS1 library and then focus on the PlayStation 2. I hope it's both. I hope they make that premium tier more appealing, because I always alternate between just extra and premium depending on what I want to play at that moment in time. Sometimes a month gets me in, that makes me want to play those old games. Sometimes it's just a complete dud. I don't need another siphon filter game, Sony. The first 3 are difficult enough. But I also have I've really enjoyed the ports that were brought over from the PS2 before then as well. Like, I've not played the ones that you said were broken there. So
What
can't
does
speak for
work?
those. Well, I played Bounty Hunter on there, like a lot of those
Right.
Aspire games and stuff.
Are they not remasters? I think. Am I just getting my technicality
they are,
issue
but-
confused?
No, Bounty Hunter isn't. It's just that was just like a PlayStation
Straight re-release.
2
Okay.
port, like along
That's good that something worked, because everything I tried was just horrible.
like stuff like that, and like the Mark of Cree and the Jack games are on there. And
Yes,
stuff.
that's true.
I've not played them all, but just the ones that I have jumped into and the ones that I have played. They were okay. Like the emulation could be better, the ports could be better, but they were fine. I didn't have a problem with those. But I do think what you said about implementing the PS1 structure as it is now on the PS2 games is better. I recently went through Alone in the Dark, the new Nightmare on that premium tier, and that is a game that kicks your ass when it comes to checkpointing and save states, and having the ability to just scrub back in the timeline and say, I want to start from this point. Revolutionary. If you get that in PS2 games, I think that's amazing.
Minority reporting it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I feel like that's becoming the industry standard. Like that's what the Switch has for everything that's emulated on there. And the PS1 stuff on PS5 has that. Like there are so many, or there have been so many advances when it comes to quick save, checkpointing, etc. Like why not just, that's all you need to do. You don't need to bother, upscaling the whole thing, re-rendering the whole thing or whatever it is. Just put the quality of life features in there. Next thing down is Resident Evil 9. Maybe getting an announcement for early 2025. We've already done a few videos on this overall, but we can touch back in on it.
Hell yeah, man. I can't wait for more Resident Evil stuff. On the one hand, Resident Evil stuff is usually announced at PlayStation, whether that's the remakes or whether it's the new games. They have a close relationship with PlayStation because you often get VR versions for the new Resident Evil games. I think it's going to happen now because Capcom likes to release a Resident Evil game every year. Last year they had a Resident Evil 4 remake, but this year they kind of don't have anything. And I think it's too early for another remake so soon after the last one. You need to give that team time to cook. In the recent rumors and leaks suggest that Resident Evil 1 is getting a remake in 26 for the franchise's 30th anniversary. So to me, it's been 3 years since we got Resident Evil 8. By the time this game comes out, it would have been 4.
Oh my God. I had to process that for a second.
There was also a 4-year gap between Resident Evil 7 and 8. So I'm like, now to me, to get a first trailer, to get a confirmation of the setting, the enemy type, and maybe even a lead character. There are rumors that Leon Kennedy is coming back. 50-year-old Leon Kennedy, which I kind of want to see. I hope he keeps the same hair. Don't get that trendy, my friend.
He fits the sad dad archetype that is every Sony character now. Not that he's obviously not a Sony character, but the idea of having it in the showcase. Let's put him alongside Joel and Kratos and keep going.
Exactly right.
myself today.
I think, of course, it won't be an exclusive. It will be coming to Xbox as well, but I feel like Sony loves the Resident Evil announcement, and if they want to get people hyped for third-party games, and if they want to give VR a little bit of a push as well, announce Resi 9 and talk about how it's coming to VR
Just
as well.
poke the corpse that is PSVR 2.
Don't remind me
Revive
about
it
it.
a
You'll
little bit.
notice that I've been very kind and not put a single thing about VR in there, because I don't know if they'll touch on it at all.
Someone should. I don't know if, is there anything in the VR space?
Batman Arkham Shadow.
Even that's Oculus exclusive.
Oh
or
yeah,
whatever it is.
crap.
Just no company knows what the hell they're doing with VR. The next thing down is a bit of marathon gameplay and the alpha being announced for early next year or the end of this year. I think this is your prediction for this thing.
I know, sorry, I'm hogging all the predictions so far.
It's a delightful hogging, to be fair.
Hogs of War.
It's not the first time I've heard that, you.
Let it sit.
Well, I was going to say marathon.
Yes.
Yes.
Bungie could do with something.
They could do with something. We got the CG trailer for that at the last PlayStation showcase, and I don't think it will be ready anytime soon, but I do think at the very least we will get some reveal of what gameplay is actually like. And I'm putting my hat on an alpha this year because I remember the Destiny alpha when that dropped. In fact, I think that might have been a 2-week PlayStation exclusive in and of itself.
Yes.
And I just think Sony need to prove that they know what they're doing with their live service games, and Marathon, I've used the phrase tip of the spear a lot, but they bought Bungie to give them
The Vanguard.
something. The Vanguard, that's a better thing.
Hey, expanding our vocabulary.
That's what it's always, why it's always great to work with you. You always get some new
living
new in my
thesaurus.
lexicon. But yeah, I think they've got a little bit to prove with it. I think the reception was a little bit mixed, so allowing people to get hands-on, we've seen that create buzz with a lot of first-person shooter multiplayer games over the last few years. You know, we've seen it with X Defiant really recently. That thing might have fumbled its release, but the beta and the alphas were really well received. So I think if Sony kind of wants to prove that they know what they're doing with live services and multiplayer stuff, give us their hands on
with
it.
long overdue a new FPS thing to enter into that space. I'm actually so excited for this because, again, like obviously I've always got faith in Bungie, right? I'm not a Destiny guy because I don't really care about the looter shooter aspect of stuff, but the idea of them being in a competitive PvP space again, even with like the live service caveat or what you want to call it, that gets me excited because Battlefield's on its butt still, but EA just keeps on saying every now and then, this new Battlefield is going to be the best Battlefield you've ever seen. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. It's like, can I see it? No. So I'm hoping that Marathon, I would love to have a first glimpse of this game because
the first-person shooter space is really interesting because there was that whole court case that went back and forward when Xbox/Microsoft were trying to acquire Activision Blizzard. All the conversations around Call of Duty, Sony saying there's no way that we can make a Call of Duty competitor, and then all the stuff that Xbox was trying to do about giving them like an 8-year clause or a 10-year clause or whatever. Alongside, for the last few years, there's been this rumored first-person shooter, military shooter that's first party. You might remember better than me the staff that were brought across, I think from Infinity Ward.
It was Treyarch.
From Treyarch,
yeah.
The idea being that Sony would make their own Call of Duty essentially and do a first-person shooter that is a military shooter. They've had similar things on PSVR. It didn't last too long, but Firewall Zero Hour was like a Rainbow Six or like a Call of Duty. They've had games in the past that had a military feel, something like Killzone, SOCOM would be the perfect thing to bring back. Yeah. But maybe they want to do a new IP or whatever. But there are rumors doing the rounds that whatever that project is ready to be shown or at least be teased because it's been mentioned for the last 4 or 5 years. And like I said, because you had all the court case stuff, obviously they lost that and Call of Duty did go across to Xbox. So why not jumpstart and say, hey, we don't even need that thing. We have our own. We have Call of Duty at home, and it's actually pretty good. So either that, or like you say, you have Bungie take the lead on it, and they are arguably the kings of first-person shooting in the console space, or at least they used to be. Why not lead with something that just looks incredible?
Dude, I think ever since I started this job, I have been saying that Sony needs a first-person shooter series because I just think it's such a huge blind spot. And if they are pushing into live service stuff, I think you think of live service and you think of Call of Duty, you think of those first-person games. Obviously, I've just blanked on that.
Overwatch 2, damn it.
Titanfall 2.
Titanfall 2. Maybe they're not as ubiquitous as I thought, but I do feel like they go hand in hand. Apex Legends, PUBG, you know what I mean?
There he is.
There they are, all coming back to the forefront of the brain. So yeah, I would love to see them announce multiple FPS franchises going forward because I just think they could do it really well. And like you said, with them not having that close relationship with Call of Duty anymore, I think it's going to be fascinating that this is the first year since the PS4 era that Call of Duty hasn't been on the PlayStation stage. Like they had that marketing deal down where they were so intrinsically linked with it. I do think they are I don't know what you guys think about this. I do think they are right in the court case that they can't make another Call of Duty. Like they can make something that rivals it in terms of quality, but I just don't think you're ever going to go toe-to-toe with Call of Duty with the cultural relevance it has and the install base that it has and the popularity that it has and match anywhere near that.
I disagree. Yeah, massive. If we're talking new IP, look at Helldivers 2. Like, I think you put enough marketing behind something and you say from the creators of Call of Duty, you hire the right staff. Look at the success of Helldivers 2, the success of Pal World. People love new ideas, new IP. I think Call of Duty's best years are behind it overall, and I think you can do better than that.
I think Call of Duty, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about quality. Sony can absolutely make a game that is better than Call of Duty to play. I'm just talking about like market penetration and saturation. I think you can say that Call of Duty's best years are behind it, but then it's also recently had its best years financially with like the release of Modern Warfare 2019 and the microtransaction side of Warzone. Like Warzone, I think really reinvigorated the brand and just the amount of users Call of Duty is able to reach. I don't think for as big as Halo is, for as big as Destiny is, just it doesn't get to that level. Like I don't like Crunchyroll approaching numbers like this, but there's a reason Activision looked at Bungie and Destiny and said, "You're not big enough for us," because it didn't reach those Call of Duty levels, right?
True.
And that's kind of what I'm saying.
It's the
with
FIFA, Call of Duty, EA. Like, there's millions of people out there who get like 2 games a year.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
It's probably. I definitely like Joe. I agree with you that they can make something that could be better, qualitatively speaking. Obviously, phenomenons like Helldivers 2 are like really, really big for that reason. But I still, it's one of those where it's like there's going to be a case where I'm excited to get new FPS games, because it's like when we talk about them right now, Overwatch 2, like Overwatch has gone basically. You know, we had Rainbow Six Siege was like nine years ago.
Yeah, ages ago.
Like we've been dying for something to enter into this space, and you know, I don't think anything's going to overtake Call of Duty as like a cultural kind of like totemic game.
Right.
But I think that, you know, the time right now is there to strike.
This is it. Like, I'm not saying that like Sony can't produce a success. Like you said, Helldivers 2 sold 12 million copies. All I mean is compared to Call of Duty, like Battlefield in its heyday with Battlefield 3 when it was going head to head with COD, sold 15 million copies. And even EA said like, right, we can't go after these guys. I mean, and that was, 10 years ago or whatever it is. So I do think like the market would eat it up, as we've seen with Helldivers, as we've seen with Destiny, and that's continued success. I just mean in terms of, I think losing Call of Duty is ultimately going to be a hit, especially if it gets put on Game Pass and becomes so associated with Xbox. But Sony can try to fill that gap, absolutely, with a new franchise. And like Ewan said, I think now is definitely the time when people are kind of wanting that multiplayer hit, and have got it a little bit with Helldivers 2 at the start of the year. And if we can get that from a first-party perspective, job's a good one.
That's I'm just a very never say never person, but I just genuinely think you put the full weight of the Sony marketing behind it. You have phrases in the trailers that say from the creators of Call of Duty, and you remind people every step of the way that it's the next thing. There's enough negative stuff around Call of Duty's reputation, whether it be install file sizes or people getting sick of the IP. Right. You bring people in that way.
Like it's like the Medal of Honor died at some point. You know what I mean? It could happen.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater
to
died,
the King as well. Like no one's completely infallible there. So I agree with you, Scott, in that sense. I think there is a way that can happen, but I do think that it will take a lot of time. It will take a lot of time for habits to break. People are very baked into that routine now.
I'm with you. Like Call of Duty will die at some point. It will go the way of the dodo, and it will go the way of
hear that Call of Duty?
You're
gonna die.
Your days are numbered. The thing is, though, No, just super quick. That's the toss-up, right? Because like Xbox buys Call of Duty, we know that they have a fraction of the market share that PlayStation and Nintendo have. You saw like the last couple of weeks all the conversations around Call of Duty being on Game Pass, and then some people saying, "Well, guess I'm getting the Xbox." I'm curious how many people actually follow through on that, whether they just stay on their PlayStation, and then if PlayStation then provide a Call of Duty alternative, it's like, well, I don't need to bother forking out all the hundreds of cash for it. XDefiant is another test case for this. I don't think that's going to be anything.
Not to interrupt again,
but you see
the
people
real
do it.
litmus test for this, the school playground, because like when we were growing up, it was like Call of Duty was the thing that you had to have. It was the game that you had to have, and
that's why I don't think it's that anymore.
And like now everyone's playing Fortnite. Everyone's kind of looking at these other different live services. Obviously, Warzone is still huge as well. Yeah. But it's one of those where it's like we're very much immersed in these online spaces, and obviously that's not to say that casual video game fans, people who play or diehard Call of Duty fans, aren't on those online spaces. But there is a certain area of conversation that we can't necessarily be privy to. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how that cultural cachet will evolve with obviously like the diminished reach that Xbox has compared to PlayStation.
I think going off what you both have said, I think the one difference may be that Sony can provide a Call of Duty competitor, but I don't know why people who play COD religiously and that is their one game a year would have their heads turned, because it's going to continue to come out on PlayStation consoles for the next 10 years. Like that's part of the deal. It's always going to remain multi-platform. The best Xbox can do is say you can get it quote unquote free on Game Pass, but it's always going to be available on PlayStation at least that for this next decade. So I think they can provide an alternative that will get other people in. But I just think, I don't know, every time we've bet against COD, and I know it will die, I know it will win eventually, but every time we've bet against COD, especially when we've said from the makers of X Studio, nothing has ever reached COD levels for whatever reason. Battlefield has never reached it. Titanfall never reached it. literally from the developers of the Call of Duties people loved. You know, Destiny never reached it. All of these games that tried and failed to go after COD, it's like Man City, right? Every season, and I love to crowbar football reference to this, every season people say Liverpool's going to chase them, Arsenal's going to chase them, and it's like, at the end of the day, it's Man City, it's Call of Duty, they are so big, and I just feel like betting against them in the short term. I think it's like in 5 years' time, gradually they could decline, but I don't think Call of Duty is ever going to go overnight.
Well, that's all I'm referring to, like the long term. Like, I mean, like I said, that 10-year thing where it's still going to be available on PlayStation, you have 10 years to build goodwill around another brand. Also, the examples you gave there, just from my side, would be like none of those were pound for pound hitters. Like Destiny messed up its entire story. Like it was horribly received and it was patched so much. It took them until Destiny 2 before it was even stronger. Then there was all the microtransaction controversy. Titanfall 2 was released at a horrible time. Like no one's ever really gone pound for pound against COD and actually been able to be supported the right way. Like Battlefield 2142 or 2042, whatever, was the most positively received or looking game until it launched. Then it was horrible again. Like it's like if there was something that had everything in the right place and then we saw it fail, fine.
I agree. And we've talked so much about COD on the PlayStation.
This fish is a big deal, damn it.
No, it really is. It really is. I think you are right. You are right. None of those have been as fully formed as Call of Duty because, like, one of you said about an hour ago, Call of Duty has had this 20-year lead to get everything refined. But to me, that's indicative of how hard it is to make a COD killer. We've had excellent studios try and fail. Franchises in their prime like Battlefield try and fail. Is Sony, with their relative lack of experience in the FPS genre, capable of making that fully formed product? As much as I do like the games they've put out, I don't know.
It's so interesting because a lot of this hinges on the evolution of the multiplayer feel because Battle Royale has been the thing for like 7 years now. Please die. Go away. Wait, we might need Battle Royale to die for something else to come in.
Well, their assumption is extraction shooters, which it so far hasn't been the thing.
But that's also like Battle Royale adjacent in a way because it's like you drop it into a map, you got one life, then you pick up a thing. So
I was going to mention in that regard, like the Division Heartland game got cancelled by Ubisoft. That was an extraction shooter version of the Division, and that didn't test well. It got it got cancelled. Marathon is Bungie and Sony's big bet, at least for their existing first party idea, and whether that goes down well or not, whether extraction shooters are the next big thing or not, I don't think they are. I still think it's deathmatch and PvP, but like you can still have Battle Royale blow up and everything, but the core foundation still needs to be there.
I think Marathon being an extraction shooter is going to be interesting because I do think they could make it the next big thing. Obviously, it's huge in the PC space when you got like Tarkov and stuff, even stuff like
the Hunt Showdown.
Yeah, the Hunt Showdown. But we've seen the big franchises who got into Battle Royale and found some success or just have regular success in multiplayer try to dip their toes into extraction stuff and have it not work. Battlefield 2042 had a mode that instantly dropped support. COD had DMZ, which was the extraction thing for them.
Right.
That's not getting any further support either. So it's like maybe with those big franchises doubling down on Battle Royale and doubling down on their regular multiplayer offerings, maybe Sony can come out and be the first big AAA console extraction shooter success story. I can definitely see that, to be fair, if you get the elements right. I'm
just fascinated by how it all plays out going forward. Like, you know, obviously all the inner turmoil at Xbox as well. Like, you have them acquiring studios and then not knowing what to do with them. And Activision themselves have been all over the place with Call of Duty, where it means moving studios around to try and get something over the finish line each year. It seems like it's only harder for them to keep up this 1 year cadence as the generation rolls on and technology gets better. And they're about to start trying to cater to the new Xbox console and PS5 Pro and whatever. Meanwhile, you have this potential of a PlayStation first person shooter that can lean on, hey, it's skins from God of War, it's Jin from like Ghost of Tsushima. Like, you have all that combined brand power.
She's got a new hat.
I'll take the new hat, but we will see.
Sorry, last
yes.
is final thoughts. Like, I want to make it clear, I love Call of Duty. I want it to fail. I want the wheels to come off that train. And I'll tell you why. One, I want more competition. But two, I want to prove to Activision that the model they have for development now does not work. Because like you said, they have been laying the tracks in front of them for about 10 years at this point. Treyarch's always called in to fix a fire. New games are started, then cancelled, then reworked. It's just, the model doesn't work. It might have worked in the PS4 era, but those teams I think they need more time. I think they deserve more respect for building this huge franchise, and I hope it always takes a failure for a big company to realize that things need to change. And I hope, they eventually realize and don't shut the studios down or kill COD, but allow those studios to do what, to their credit, Ubisoft did with Assassin's Creed and say, right, we're taking the foot off the gas. We're going to give you more time and more resources to polish these things up. And I just kind of hope that is the future of COD, because I do think those teams are so talented. Those sub-franchises can still produce great things. It's just, I agree that the current model is just untenable at the moment.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how they handle it on the Xbox side. We'll get to the Xbox stuff in a bit. There's there's conversation around Game Pass pricing models changing and versions of Call of Duty going on Game Pass, etc. To round out the Sony stuff, though, you wrote down the idea of them opening or ending on Ghost of Tsushima 2, and that being their big holiday 2025 release. Also, Sony Santa Monica, their new IP, maybe something based on God of War, or just what's happening with Naughty Dog. What do you think they end on? I think Naughty Dog IP is...
This is my question to you two. This is why I put this in the notes, because my initial thought was end on Ghost of Tsushima and kind of build your showcase around the next year and a half, because I don't think we're going to get those new IPs until 2026 and beyond. So if you end on Ghost of Tsushima, make that your big first-party fall 2025 game alongside something like Venom early in the year. I think that is enough to get people excited. That said, it was mentioned earlier this month at the PlayStation earnings report that they're going to outline their long-term plans for PlayStation going forward. And that could just mean the next year and a half, but it could mean the rest of the generation, right? So I think if they are going to tease the new IP, we will open on Ghost of Tsushima 2 and have us be like, what the hell? But if those IPs aren't there, I think they'll end on Ghost of Tsushima 2, have a trailer and maybe even a bit of a gameplay sneak peek, because I don't think they need those new IP right now. But if they want to lay out, right, these are the biggies. These are why
some hits.
Yeah. Here we go. He's the only 2025. He is the year after, and maybe the year after that. I think that would be the reason for them to do it. But I'm kind of going either way on whether they do that or not, because previously they've been like the next 6 months, the next year, the next year and a half. We're not going beyond that.
I'm so curious how much the new leadership's been able to do across the last few weeks. Like they only replaced Jim Ryan, I think, at the beginning of May or whatever, in terms of when it was officially announced anyway. But maybe that does mean they go, okay, what's in the works? How do we plan this out? I feel like the general live service push that Jim Ryan put in was an absolute disaster. Like the fact that they had to cancel Last of Us Factions. Like, how do you cancel a Naughty Dog game? What the hell are you doing?
Well, you cancel the one that made the most sense.
Well, kind of, but then you're also like forcing all these like known single player teams to just do a live service, which is the thing that Rocksteady hated doing with Suicide Squad, etc., etc. It hasn't worked, and I wonder how much this showcase or the conversations for the rest of this year are just reminding people, hey, we know what the hell we're doing now, because that will be really good. I think you do something with Naughty Dog. It's been so long, and they need to make good after The Last of Us Factions was cancelled. Just throw the Naughty Dog logo on screen and just tell us what your next project is. And hopefully at this point, you at least know what it is, and know that you'll be able to make good on whatever that project is. I don't think it's Last of Us Part 3. I know Druckmann's talked about that a lot. I don't think they mentioned that until it's closer to coming out. I do hope for a Ghost of Tsushima 2. I'd also love a new IP from Naughty Dog. I want something other than the dour look at the floor era. I'll take anything else.
The reason why I think it might be Santa Monica first is just because we know that while God of War Ragnarok was in production, Cory Barlog was working on something else in that studio. And because The Last of Us Factions was cancelled, and it seems like a bunch of the studios working on that, I wonder if just Santa Monica might be ready beforehand. I mean, they only released Ragnarok the other year, but just that idea of like, what is Cory Barlog being up to in that studio?
Also,
just standing there menacingly,
just stroking his chin. I'm forgetting the name of God of War Ragnarok's DLC, but that very much rounded off that character. Like, and I maintain, I think this, but I think that was Sony attempting to make a live service out of God of War, and then when that started going sideways, they repackaged it as that DLC. The fact that it's this like rogue, like endless runner unlocking costumes thing for God of War, just made me think they could have over monetized that, and it just feels like corporate said, and super simplifying, corporate said to Sony Santa Monica, can you do us a live service with God of War? Because it's a big IP. And they started doing that, and then it was packaged differently. But there are really good story elements in that if you make it through enough runs. But my point is that I think Sony Santa Monica is now done with God of War. Like the idea that they were going to do another big major game, I don't think we're getting that anymore. I think that stuff is done. So whether Cory Barlog started on something and the rest of the team joined after the DLC was finished, you'd think that they have something to show.